Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Game Develop Repeat. I am your host, Chris, and today's episode is absolutely stacked. We've got a community shout out at the end of the episode. We have got a deep discussion on picking the right game idea and my defense of why you should make whatever idea interests you and why you shouldn't chase the market necessarily. And I think I have the evidence to back that up. I've got so many ideas right now for episodes that I want to make. I want to do an episode on clone games and how the how a genre evolves, right? What we think of as clone games, I think, is actually the evolution of a genre. I've got an episode about scams, and then I've also just got all the usual ideas for individual game episodes. So look forward to that. We'll see what I end up coming out with next. For now, I'm going to limit myself to just this one topic of picking the right game. Let's get started, as we always do, with some examples. I'm going to go through a few game ideas, a few pitches for games, and I want you to tell me whether or not these games have any chance of success. I want you to tell me whether or not anyone would be interested in playing this. How good will it be? How hard to execute is it? Is it possible? Are these ideas the right ideas? Are these marketable ideas? Can you pull these off as a game developer? Is it even possible? First idea, you are a chicken and you have been recruited almost like you're like James Bond or something. You've been recruited by the president to help solve a bunch of crises by jumping around because you're a chicken. Next game, you are a boy who does not have skin and the world is a dangerous place and everything you touch is dangerous. So you have to be really careful what you touch. And you're kind of sliding around because you have no skin, so there's like blood everywhere. And that's the game, right? Oh, you have to save somebody. Like give it like a Mario vibe, right? You've got to save a princess, essentially. Next idea, religious trauma. Religious trauma, the video game. You are trapped in a basement by a crazy fanatical religious family, but you're just a child. You're a very young child trapped in a basement. And now you have to fight your way out of this basement with all these crazy religion-themed evil things, and it's just like really gross, but kind of vaguely cute. You may be recognizing some of these ideas by now. Next idea, you are part of a Japanese family. Just keep going with me and keep trying to figure out if these are good, worthy game ideas or not, right? You're part of a Japanese family. You know what? Let's just play the whole family. Just take turns playing each member, and each member has to go do something out in the world, but each one of them has some kind of awful thing happen to them, right? They have some crazy crisis pop up as they're going about their day, and they all kind of have to navigate that, and it just keeps escalating out of control and getting crazier and crazier. Last one, I promise. You are a dog that likes to rap, and you're learning to rap, and you're interacting with other people in your town, and you're learning from an onion, and you're rapping to kind of go about your daily business. These games are, in order, Super Chicken Jumper, Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac, Incredible Crisis, and Parappa the Rapper. They are all successful games to varying degrees, and they are all great games. They're all so interesting and so good, and the ideas behind them are insane. If you listen to those ideas, you go, what the heck? If your buddy was like, hey, I want to make a game about a dog that raps, what would you say? What would you think, right? What do you say to yourself when you think, I want to make a game about a dog that raps, or I want to make a game about an average Japanese family running into a lot of difficulties? Does that sound good initially? If it sounds good to you, it's because you know there's something there. When you were listening to me pitch those game ideas just now, you probably recognized at least one of them, if not all of them. And you were probably going, oh, yeah, of course that's good. Because you can see what it is. You know what it actually is, right? I describe a guy without skin jumping around, and you see Super Meat Boy. You don't just see the vague idea of a guy without skin jumping around. The person creating that game has an idea of why it's fun, and they may not be able to put it into words yet. They may not be able to show you why it's fun. That's because they haven't made it yet. And this is why it's so important, I think, to not be discouraging, to not go, oh, that's a bad idea. Oh, that'll never succeed. Oh, that's not great. That's nonsense. It's you haven't been able to see the vision yet. They haven't been able to put it into its form yet. Maybe they don't have the skills yet. Maybe they haven't figured out how to display it to you. And maybe in your own games, you'll have some crazy idea and you'll try to execute on it and you'll be like, this isn't it. Look at it and go, but what is it that I'm actually trying to make? What is the thing that appealed to me about this? And if you can follow that thread, you can follow the real idea, right? The idea of a Japanese family experiencing a bunch of trouble can go a million different ways, but whoever created Incredible Crisis, whoever the creative visionary behind that game was, they had a specific vision. And they had to share that and communicate that with their team in order to get the game made. It wasn't just, let's just make things happen to this family and sort through it, right? Like there's more behind it than that. And that's why it's so hard to communicate these ideas, because the only way to really communicate the idea that you have, your great game idea, the only way to really communicate it in its full is to make it. If you don't make it, people aren't going to be able to see what you mean. People aren't going to be able to understand. So if you have a crazy idea, if you have a deranged, bizarre game idea that doesn't make any sense, and you explain it to people and they look at you funny and they go, how is that going to be fun? I don't understand how being a chicken that jumps around is going to be fun. I don't understand how being a dog that raps is going to have any charm behind it whatsoever. But you see it, then try it, right? Make insane things because they can be successful. We've seen it over and over and over again. I would argue, and this I don't have data for, except for just my experience of playing games my whole life. But I have a very specific perspective, so whatever, right? It's anecdotal. I would argue that success is more likely if you are following the ideas that you love, that you are interested in, that you are passionate about. I think you're going to make a good game more often following those passions than by following what you think will be successful, right? Make the crazy idea. See what it turns into, because that is what you want to make. You're not going to spend 4 years making something you don't want to make. And if you are, you're going to do it because you think it's going to succeed. And then it might not, because you don't know what makes it good. I think what I'm trying to say is, if you have a weird idea, you know more about it than if you just know what is successful. If you just vaguely know what is successful, that's fine, but you don't have a full vision of a game there, right? Like you don't have all of the details tucked away in the back of your mind. You don't have all these weird experiences in your life that are pushing you towards this one bizarre idea. You don't have a ton to draw from. You're not making what you know, right? People always say, write what you know. It's that sort of a thing. If you've got some weird, crazy idea, you know that idea. You've got something driving you there, and there's this deep well of stuff inside of you that can contribute to that weirdness. And I just want you to embrace that weirdness. I just want you to recognize that that weirdness is good. It's beautiful. It's helpful. It's useful. And if you're one of these people who's deep into the I want to be able to succeed thing, it's, I think, the better path to success. Partially because you're going to enjoy that lifestyle a lot more than if you're just chasing what you think is going to be successful and making things that are kind of empty but marketable and whatever. But anyway, we'll not go down that whole path. I think comfort with people looking at you like, what are you talking about, is big here. I think you either don't talk about the idea, or when you do talk about the idea, you just go, yeah, people are gonna think I'm insane. Nobody wants to hear about my weird rapping dog game, or my weird skinless boy game, or my chicken jumping game, or Octodad, right? Like, you're like, yeah, people aren't gonna get it. Or maybe they'll give you a laugh. Like, maybe they will get it, but in that like comedy way. You need to be comfortable with that. Right? I think if you're somebody who has insane ideas, you got to be comfortable with the fact that eventually you're going to execute on it and show it to people, and until then they're going to be like, "What? I don't get it. I don't understand." Some people will understand. Keep them around, right? They're great. The people who understand are fantastic, and they're wonderful people. And the people who have the patience to try to understand this half-baked idea about a rapping dog, those are the people who you want to share creative stuff with. If they're willing to listen and like kind of try to figure it out, and then like they might even bounce ideas with you, right? Like listen to your ideas, bounce off with you, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right? Whatever. But the ones who are willing to go down that path with you and not go, "Oh, that doesn't sound very good," right? Those are great folks. And there's a lot of them out there, right? This is about confidence in yourself and your ideas, and the fact that you will figure out how to execute on this stuff eventually. The first ones you make are going to be bad. It's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. We just got to accept that. And then it's going to get better and better and better and better. We can figure out how to make this bizarre stuff. And maybe your idea, let's be clear, maybe your idea is not bizarre. Maybe your idea is extremely conventional or straightforward, but it draws you, right? You're like, I don't know why, but I just want to make a game about climbing a mountain. It's just a platform about climbing a mountain, and something is sucking me in there, and I just know that I want to make it. As you explore that idea, you're going to find out why you want to make it. And the game I'm thinking of right now is Celeste. On its face, it's a person climbing a mountain, right? But it's a deep, profound emotional journey, right? And that mountain ends up being the perfect metaphor for this whole thing. It's incredible. It's one of the best games I have ever played. It is a top tier game. You can just explore a boring idea that interests you. It doesn't have to be something crazy, right? If it's pulling you, there's a reason it's pulling you. Listen to it. It's like if you're sitting down and your back starts to feel uncomfortable, there's a reason it starts to feel uncomfortable. You need to change the position you're sitting in. Creatively, if there is an idea that is sucking you in, there is a reason it is sucking you in, and you've got to explore it. You got to find out why. You got to be curious, and you got to go, what is it in me that is leading me to this idea? What is it about this that makes me want to make it? And I think that all of these games do that. I think that all of these bizarre, weirdo games that people are making are explorations of some interest, right? Nobody makes that kind of bizarre, strange experience unless they want to, right? There's somebody who wants to make it. Katamari Damacy is the most insane, bizarre, confusing thing I think I've ever played. That's not true. There's so many crazy things out there, but Katamari Damacy is one of the weirdest games I've played, and it is gorgeous. It is perfect. I love that game so much, and it makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense because somebody was just somebody had a vision, and they followed that vision, and they understood what it was going to be, and they figured out how to execute on it, and there it is. And this is where you start wanting to build skills. We'll talk about that in the next section. When you start chasing a game idea that interests you, you start going, how do I do this? And then you learn, right? You don't go, oh, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to learn all these skills, and then one day I'm going to be able to make a cool thing. No, I always think that's how it works. I fall into that trap constantly. Like, oh, I need to develop all these skills, and then one day I'll have a cool, like maybe if you need a month where you don't have an idea and you just want to build some skills, cool, build some skills. But If you're sitting there for years and you're just building skills, you're missing the reason that you're building the skills. If if a game idea is driving me, and by the way, everybody works differently, right? Sure. But in my mind, if I've got a game idea driving me, if I've got some idea driving me, then I want to learn the skill and I get very specific with the skills. It helps me target exactly what I'm trying to learn, not just vaguely. I'm not just trying to learn animation. I'm trying to learn how to animate this particular character for this particular action in this particular art style at this size. There are all these details that you do not learn until you are in the situation figuring it out. And when we're chasing one of these ideas, when we're chasing our interests, we start developing rapidly. We have the motivation to say, this is exactly why I need this skill, so I have to work on this skill, and I'm just going to learn it. I'm just going to figure it out, and then I'm going to be able to put it into the thing. And it's still going to be bad initially, and then maybe you do another draft, or maybe you finish it up and go on to the next game, right? But as you explore, you learn. Not just about yourself, not just about your idea, but you develop skills in the process by chasing whatever it is that you want to make, right? Let's talk about limitations. I think this is an interesting part of this. Limitations on making your game. People tell you, do not make an MMO as your first game. With everything that I just said, you might think, oh, well, if an MMO is what interests me, then I'm going to make an MMO. Do not make an MMO as your first game. I stand with that advice firmly. Chase what interests you. Do not make an MMO as your first game. Just to be a real straight shooter with it. Don't make that. Don't make a giant open world JRPG. Now, if there's a concept within the MMO that you want to work on, if there's some mini game that you like, if there's something about the combat that you like, you can just make that thing. You can reduce it down. You can take it to just a chunk of that game and make that into its own game. Figure out what it is that you love about the MMO and look into that. Maybe you like the social connection. Maybe you can make a game that's about that doesn't require all of the crazy networking and stuff, right? Maybe you can make an artificial version of that thing. But there are limitations. There are some limitations in terms of narrowing down the scope of your idea. And that's really why MMOs and JRPGs are not a first game thing. They're really not really great indie projects in general because the scope is so big, right? So you've really got to have really tight control of scope. You've got to have incredible control of scope in order to make something that big with a small team. And that is a skill that you do not have on an early project. And that is a skill that is very hard to develop. The only way to do it is by making smaller things. So never make an MMO as your first game. Do not do it. That is, I stand firm here. Just take a chunk of it. Make it very, very small scale, right? And if you're insistent, if you're like, I have to make an MMO, do everything you possibly can to make the scope absolutely tiny. And I mean tiny, right? I don't think that these are actually, okay, so I'm talking about limitations. I want to think of limitations as guardrails. I want to think limitations as when you go bowling. Do people still go bowling, by the way? I don't know. But let's say you go bowling. They've got those rails they can put up that make sure that you don't get a gutter ball. You're paying attention to your limitations is just setting up what level of guardrail you need, right? It's just keeping yourself from getting a gutter ball. When you first start developing, you are just chucking that ball and it is bouncing every single direction. And that's why we make small projects, right? Because we just need to go, we can't go that far because then we're not going to get anything out of this because it's just going to go in the gutter and we're not going to learn anything or anything. But if you put up those bumper rails, if you put up a few limitations, if you lock in scope, if you lock in genre a little bit, if you really limit yourself to a time frame and all this stuff, then you've got some guardrails. then you're going to make sure that you learn something. You're going to make sure that you get a point on the board. You're going to make sure you have a win of some variety, and you don't just go down this 10-year path of getting lost in some giant project that you're not actually really like, you're not going to feel accomplished at the end of necessarily because you've invested so much into it, and it's a whole thing, right? I mean, you could, it depends, person to person, right? But generally, I think it's a good idea to put up some of these limitations. Are there games that you want to make that you can't make? Kind of. There are games you want to make that you just have to adapt, right? There are games that you want to make that at the moment you don't have all the skills, and you can adapt and you can narrow it down and pare it down to make something else. Because the fact is, you're going to be sitting there for hours every week, so many hours working on that game, and it doesn't matter how excited you are about it. Eventually, you're going to reach a point where if you're just constantly banging your head against a wall, you're not going to like the idea anymore, and you're not going to want to work on it anymore. And that's fine. It's going to turn into a game that you don't want to make, right? It's going to go from game I want to make to game I don't want to make. So if you pick a game that you're kind of interested, that you can make, that you can pursue, I think that is kind of the recipe for success, right? So take that incredible idea that you have, narrow it down enough that it's tackleable, that it's something you can handle, and then get after it. And if that idea makes no sense to anybody else, I'm even more excited about it. Please chase it. But then if it makes no sense to you, then you got to sort some stuff out and figure out what it is that you're really trying to chase. But my God, do the weird thing, please, because this is a selfish thing. Me personally, I would like to play another Super Meat Boy. I would like to play another Incredible Crisis, any one of these games, these bizarre, weirdo games. I want another Katamari Damacy. Do it for people like me who just want this weird stuff, who want to experience games that are just so bizarre and confusing and amazing, right? You can make a game out of almost anything. So if you're passionate about making a game about some specific thing, you're the person to make it. It's you. Because everybody else is thinking of something else, because there's so many ideas out there, right? And maybe there's some crossover occasionally, but it's like anime. There's an anime about absolutely everything. There's an anime that I love that's like over 100 episodes about baking bread, and it's fantastic. It's called, I think it's Yakutite Japan. I pronounced it wrong. Just accept that, please. Thank you. I apologize, but that's what happens. There's an anime about everything. I think there's a game about everything too, and you just got to know that whatever it is, there's a way to make it good. And the trick is figuring out how to make it good. The trick is not finding a good idea. The trick is figuring out how to make your idea into a good game. As we bring this episode to a close, I want to shout out one of our listeners who has made a cool game and shared it with me, and who has also just been emailing back and forth with me. They've made a game called Suddenly Bird, which fits with the theme of this episode remarkably well. I didn't realize this until I was halfway through recording the episode, and then I was like, wait, Suddenly Bird is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Right? So I'm going to read you the pitch, and then I'll explain a little bit about how to play the game because it's on a weird console, and then we'll keep going. So Suddenly Bird is a small platformer game following a day in the life of our main character, Stanley. Stanley works for Corvid Express delivering packages. Recently, though, he has been having trouble delivering packages on time due to the strangest issue. He suddenly turns into a bird. Now, if that's not weird, charming idea, I don't know what is. It is a 1-bit aesthetic. It is being made on a console that is very niche. It's being made on the Playdate console, which is something that I've been wanting to pick up for a while and can't quite justify. It's a little bit expensive. It takes a while to arrive. And as much as I want it, I can't pick it up. It's got a one of the reasons Fev emailed me was because he was like, "Hey, you like fishing games, right? This console might be perfect for you. It's got a whole setup that's just like ideal for fishing. It's very analog. It's got a reel on the side of it. It appeals to me. It deeply appeals to me. So if you want to play this game, you can play it without the console. You just need to download the developer tools and run it through the developer tools, which is worth doing. And then maybe you'll look at the dev tools and be like, I'm kind of curious about this. I'll investigate a bit. Who knows? Maybe it leads you down a rabbit hole and you start developing games for this console. You never know where one little exploration is going to lead you, right? I will leave a link in the description to this game. Check it out. Take a look at the art style. I love the art style. Fev said that the art is not. What did they say? Fev said that the art was like one of their weak points. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is great. This is great art. I love the old 1-bit aesthetic. I like it so much. It's a marvelous game. The audio is good too, which I'm a sucker for. I like it a lot. Good work, Fev. Keep it up. Keep sharing with me. Other people out there who are making cool stuff or just want to get in touch, you can email me at anxiousbuddhagames@gmail.com, or you can join the Discord. There's a link in the episode description, in the show notes, whatever you want to call it. There is also going to be a link to Suddenly Bird, which I encourage you to at least take a glance at. Now, let's get to these questions. First question for myself. What ideas, wild or mundane, keep sticking in your head? What do you keep coming back to? For me, it's fishing minigames. I have reached a point now where I think I'm going to end up developing an entire game with a much bigger scope just to put the right fishing minigame in it. Because I'm so wild with this. I don't like fishing games on their own most of the time, right? It's fine. It's like, it's good, cool, whatever. What I want is a fishing mini game that I can jump into in a game and ignore the rest of the game. I want to feel like I'm supposed to be saving the world, but then I just go fishing instead. Like World of Warcraft was like, there's so much stuff you should be doing, but I'm just going to go fishing instead. That's the thing. So I'm going to end up making like a huge scale game, and the whole motivation is going to be to make the fishing game feel right. I know that's where my life is leading me. It's just a matter of time, and I am working towards that. I'm already starting a game of mini games right now that's going to have a little fishing mini game in it that's intentionally very simple, just to be a part of that world and to kind of stand out. Next question. Sorry, when I start talking about fishing games, you can't get me to stop. I just keep going. Next question. Do you have a I can't make that, no one will like it idea? I'm trying to think. I tend to just kind of assume that my ideas are good regardless. Like I kind of look at the idea and I'm like, yeah, there's some way to make it good. But I think I have a lot of ideas that are like, no, I can't make that, no one will like it. I think sometimes I just go, yeah, but I really want to explore it, so I'm going to. I think sometimes the fishing thing is a nobody's going to like it thing. Oh, yeah, definitely, actually. I have a really big idea that is, again, another fishing thing. I don't know why that's so embedded so deeply into my brain. There's something about, like, I don't even like fishing in real life. But yeah, I have an idea like that. I'm not going to go into details because I may eventually make it, so whatever. I don't want to share it because actually I intend to make it one day, but it's too big in scope and it's a whole thing. Last question. What do you have to lose by making something? And I mean that as a real question. This question gets asked like sarcastically or like rhetorically so often that people kind of ignore it. But I mean actually, what do you have to lose by making something? Because you do have something to lose. It's not a no-lose situation. You have something to lose. Acknowledge what it is and then acknowledge what you have to gain, right? You have time to lose, right? Maybe watching TV is more valuable to you at this moment in your life because there's a social connection coming from talking about those shows with your friends. Maybe time sitting alone and reading or sitting and gaming, maybe these things are more valuable to you right now, but you have to acknowledge that there is something to lose. And then you'll be able to pick what it is that you're going to lose, right? And you'll be able to weigh it and you'll be able to go, am I getting more out of this than I am out of watching TV? Or do I like watching TV more? Right? And I mean that actually. I genuinely mean that. There is value in just chilling and just vegging out. And what I would propose to you is if you see, oh, I do have something to lose by working on creating stuff, right? I'm going to lose this much time doing this thing that I love. But you still want to create stuff? Try it out. Give it like a couple weeks and then weigh it out a little bit. Say, did this benefit me more than the other behavior? Like, what do I prefer to do? That's my pitch for you there. Because you do have something to lose. That doesn't mean it's not worth running an experiment because it's not a permanent loss, right? You can run the experiment and decide whether or not you want to make the trade-off, but you can't make that decision until you've run the experiment. So consider running that experiment. What do I have to lose? So much, right? I love just relaxing. I love just sitting and doing nothing. I love going on a hike. I love just being separate from like working on stuff, right? I love just taking time to myself and playing a game. I love gaming. One of the things I have to lose is time playing games. And the last time I played games, there's like a genre of topic that I can talk about on this show, which is like this specific game, breaking it down, getting deep in the weeds, and really going in on some specific game. And I love doing that. The more that I'd spend time developing games, the less time I have to play games, the less games I have to do a deep dive on in this show, right? There's sacrifices, right? So like that's a real thing that I feel like it's important to acknowledge. And the tip for this week is to take time to listen to yourself. That's kind of the underlying theme of this whole episode. Chasing weird ideas is about listening to yourself. It's about saying, what do I want to make and why? The other tip for this week is to check out that game that my listeners submitted. And that link is going to be in the show notes. That is everything that I have for you this week. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you got value out of this episode. This is one that I'm particularly passionate about. And I hope that you enjoyed it. And that it was in some way inspiring or motivating or something, right? I will see you all in the next one. Until then, get out there, make some stuff, and have fun with it. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.